Well, hello there. In this mini-series on discovery, the psychology of internally forming discovery, we're going to look at a work of four men in history: Einstein, Pauli, Wolfgang Pauli. Einstein is famous. Wolfgang Pauli is equally famous for his discovery of the exclusion principle in atomic orbits. John Norton is a contemporary physicist at the University of Pittsburgh. And then much further back in time, there is Proclus, a philosopher of the 5th century AD. Strange bedfellows, you might say. What an odd bunch did you select? Well, not really, because they all have something very interesting in common. And it is this: the most simple ideas, discovery, and mathematical Platonism. Isn't that interesting? Well, at least I think it is. We investigate in our discovery series some of the comments on discovery of these four men. We look at Einstein in his Herbert Spencer lecture. He specifically comments on his discovery of general relativity. And Wolfgang Pauli has some interesting remarks he makes about inner and outer conditions of the human mind and discovery. Then further back in history, much further back, we have Proclus, a 5th century philosopher, very little known, and for some reason, which will maybe come at a future time, completely ignored. But he makes very similar remarks and indeed makes the same claim that these three men write about. How this would be possible, we aim to investigate in this discovery series of these four men. I chose them because they have this in common. I also chose them because I like them. I like the way they conducted themselves. They inspire people. They inspired countless volumes of work by themselves. And I love the study course of John Norton, Einstein for Everyone. I'm a beginner learner. I'm not a mathematician, but I loved the presentation of his course, which I can recommend to everyone. So those are our four men that we've chosen for what they hold in common in mathematical Platonism: the simple ideas, who are inner unfoldments, inner internal discoveries. And that's what we would like to talk about. We will weigh these remarks against the essence of our own contemplative thoughts in our conversation on the forming psychology of perception, cognition, or awareness in this kind of discovery. That being said, there is a little theory that we will introduce before we dig into what these men are saying. The discovery of principle leads effectively to a conversion of the nature underlying our knowledge. It brings with its future investigation of this principle, it brings uncharted scientific explorations of new relationships, new ways of seeing, viewing, and experience our knowledge of the universe and of the operations of the universe. Major discoveries such as the principles on account of their uniqueness, does not necessarily follow from experience and established theoretical and empirical structures. Discovery, what we are saying is that discovery involves something more, something in addition to empirical study and to all the knowledge that we gain through our learning through long-range time. And it is this internally forming discovery, a unique internal psychological process that runs in the background, if we may say, of the learner. And the individual engages and directs his attention, his intellect, and his understanding, more particularly, over time, actively. It's evident that when we read around our men that we are going to examine, that they've done a remarkable, I would say, a vast amount of study. They were active learners all the time, chipping away at their notions, experimenting, forming new hypotheses that prepares them for discovery. For example, Einstein himself admits that he didn't know anything about spherical geometry, which he learned from his friend and colleague Michael Grossman. But this particular internal forming process formed and is produced upon this: the total sum of all empirical learning, of all one's experience, and of the whole of one's self-knowledge. The summa cognitio. It is on this high understanding, the total psychological understanding of the contemplator, of the inventor, that internal forming discovery occurs. The discovery of principle is in its depth essence the unfoldment of a new understanding of what was not before. May we say, in the idiom of our wordiverse, the unannounced. A new internally formed principle enfolds the whole sum, this total psychology of all known knowledge. It doesn't reject it, but it advances the new principle into the future. It follows from within the intellectual engagement and a constant renewal over time of the totality of the psychology, the learning and the knowledge of the perceiver former. Just a reminder, the perceiver former has a very specific place in our psychology, because perceiving always is forming. It's the most creative aspect of our whole complex unity. This particular kind of internal psychology of conversion, that is to say, self-formed understanding, a discovery internally formed by the understanding of the perceiver, forms upon this summa cognitio, the totality of learning and investigation. The fast-moving, swift interpretation, assessment, the easy intuition isn't going to cut the grade, as they say. It's not going to do anything here. But before we carry on and continue with our four thinkers through time, we would like to establish a psychological rule based on the preceding and based on the whole psychology of discovery in the wordiverse. And the psychological rule is this: there is no reference in our immediate, swift-moving selection, our perception forming our beautiful, sensible intuition or easy cognition that can give rise to this kind of internally formed discovery. Self-formed internal discovery is neither an externally referenced material discovery nor a discovery from experience itself or from empirical and theoretical structures by themselves. This formed discovery, internally formed discovery, is tightly interwoven with the continuous renewal and the active and directed intellect and understanding of the inventor or discoverer. Living a life of building, of grappling with failure, limitations, and the overcoming of the obstacles to understanding, mastering new fields. That's what we are discussing here as an active learning notion. It seems this veritably that the known empirical structures, epistemology, our relations of knowledge, fall short of this kind of discovery. But what is it that possesses no exterior references? It's the unannounced moment. It's the instant, the now that's so prolific in today's self-help literature. But it's really a very, very ancient idea, the now of ancient fame, the unannounced moment. This unannounced moment seems to us to be the most lost and the least understood psychology in discovery today. But what is the experience of these instants of understanding? We don't have to look any further than our beautiful physicist, Einstein himself. He says this of his moment of the discovery of gravitation. I was sitting in a chair in the patent office at Bern when all of a sudden a thought occurred to me. If a person falls freely in a gravitational field, he will not feel his own weight. I was startled. This simple thought made a deep impression on me. It impelled me toward a theory of gravitation. This was his inspiration for deeper study and the penetration of his principle. This kind of discovery is an internally formed discovery. It is in reality a constructive, self-forming, internally projective psychological principle that drives the advancing of our knowledge through long-range time. In our next videos, we are going to discover what these four men have to say about their discovery in the context of the rule that we've already established. Until then, stay safe, be loving to yourself, be inquisitive, and kind to others.